him. Just came across that Kyle Busch died. It looks like suddenly. And Steve, you were looking up some of the notes on that. What I know he was sick.
Yeah, it says he died. Yeah, let me see here.
Says the sudden and heartbreaking, I got it here. The sudden and heartbreaking news was announced in a joint statement by his family. Earlier today, his family revealed that Busch had been hospitalized with a severe illness. Initially, it was announced that he would miss this weekend's Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway to undergo treatment. Hours later, NASCAR and his team confirmed that he had unexpectedly passed away. While the formal cause of death has not been released, he had been privately battling a severe escalating illness. Signs of his declining health emerged publicly earlier this month during a Cup Series race at Watkins Glen. On May 10th, Busch radioed his crew to request immediate medical help and a shot, quote unquote. The moment he got out of the car, I don't know what the shot would be. That's interesting. Broadcast reports noted he was fiercely fighting an intense sinus cold and severe physical exhaustion, exacerbated by the extreme G-forces of the track. Showing his signature grit, he still managed an 8th place finish, his best of the season. And this I didn't know about him. I'm not a huge NASCAR fan, but I obviously know who he is. Nicknamed Rowdy, Busch leaves behind an unparalleled legacy as one of the greatest and most fiercely competitive drivers in motorsports history. His career milestones include two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and the all-time record holder for the most total wins across NASCAR's top 3 national series, with an astounding 234 victories and 63 individual NASCAR Cup Series wins. He's survived by his wife and 2 children. I had no idea. Again, I'm not a huge NASCAR fan. I mean, I am somewhat, but I'm not a huge NASCAR fan, that he was that dominant.
Yeah. Yeah, he was good. I mean, he was very aggressive in his driving because he was one that wasn't shy away from getting into kind of little fisticuffs after a race if somebody didn't like the way that, he was pushing the envelope, as far as racing. But I'd known that him and his brother, but especially him, it makes sense that he was nicknamed Rowdy. But yeah, that's something. Yeah. You never know. How old was he? 41?
41.
Yeah.
The sad thing is it always goes to, what was it? What got him that quick? And I don't know. It's the world we live in now. I always go to, what did he get the jab?
Yeah. And a lot of organized sports, whatever you want to call it, did.
Right. As negative as that might be, or non-politically correct. So, yeah, I don't know. That's too bad. But, yeah, it looks like NASCAR lost one of and he's got kids, one of the giants. And it's interesting that as one of the giants, again, I wonder how many people who don't follow NASCAR but are sports fans had any context for what what his legacy is and how dominant he was.
Yeah. It doesn't know. I don't know if it's not. I think there's so much competing sports nowadays. Back when I was following it, I followed it through the 90s. I followed Dale Jarrett. And then when he retired, I kind of was already getting out of it, not following. And they've changed it up a lot. Now they have, because they thought people didn't want to watch a race where somebody was dominating a race, which, I mean, sometimes it could get boring. I remember a guy named Mark Martin that raced, and it was a Michigan race where he just was doing so good and had the car so dialed in, that at the end of the race, there were only like 3 cars on the lead lap. Everybody else is a lap down because he was just doing so good, could stretch his car, not take pit stops quite as quick as others could. And so there's only 3 cars that even had a chance of winning at the end. So I think that's what they did when you have some of those to break up. But it was hard for me to keep up there. I don't know if they flip the field or they do something. They've got like 3 stages now to the racing. And I don't think it's covered. I mean, it's covered, but it wasn't like front and center. There's so much stuff that they can put on TV now that people are interested in. I mean, I don't know how many times on a Saturday and the weekend I can look up there and I'll sit there and I'll start watching these guys doing the beanbag tossing. What do they call that? Where you're tossing the beanbag into the hole. Cornhole. And they'll have one of the sausage companies or something like that. Not Hillshire, but maybe it is Hillshire. One of them that will start, doing that. So I don't think it's out as much. It's on Sundays, but there's so many other things now that they're covering. It doesn't seem like it's out in front. But no, I didn't know he was that dominant. To your point earlier, I know he's good because you always think about the names Jeff Gordon, of course Earnhardt and all that, but I didn't realize, because his career has been really since I quit watching. So maybe that's why it's kind of off our radar, that it wasn't that he was that good.
Yeah, it's too bad. And it's too bad for anything, anybody, anywhere, world famous athlete or just a normal everyday guy. He's got kids and all of that. So
yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, sports. NASCAR is going to go just fine. They'll race in Charlotte this weekend from the big memorial race. I think it's the Coca-Cola 600. They'll do all that. They'll go on just like all of us. But the big thing is, wife and kids don't have a dad or a husband now. That's the biggest thing.
Right. Yeah. I want to talk about one of the topics is I was in the sauna the other day, as I always am. And as I say all the time, there is a lot of good conversations that happen in the sauna, both business wise, but also life and politics and sports and other takes. And I was in there, and a young guy was in there, probably 35 years old. Steve, I think we talked about this. And this dude said to me, a complete stranger, I didn't know who he was, that he was a little fat. He wasn't terribly out of shape, but apparently he had been in great shape. And he said, then kind of life took a turn and I was depressed. And so I got fat. And I was like, what? I was like, what? Depressed. And the guy literally said this out loud in the sauna. And so much so that from my side, I was like, hold on a minute, man. No. Because, again, he's a younger dude. I was like, depression, like compared to what the life your great grandfather had 100 years ago. Right? What was his life like? And to his credit, this guy's response was immediate. And he's like, yeah, that's pretty weak that I even said that. But I think that it made me think about men don't understand, we have been in this society that we live in, men have become victims. We want to culture has decided, the feminized culture that we live in, that everybody is a victim. And I think it's worse for men because, and I'm talking men from, again, 18 years old all the way up. We don't know how to be a victim. It doesn't make sense with us. And it's not because men don't suffer or don't get screwed over, right? And men have all of the issues that people have had throughout history, abused and abandoned, and women have betrayed them, and families and broke, and you've gotten in accidents and been injured, and the wife cheated and divorced, or you've been addicted, or just life has crushed you. It happens to everybody. But I see this telling men that you're a victim is more of a paralytic. It paralyzes you more than it gives you a way out, because I think men generally are not wired to be victims. It's not that we can't be victimized. That's 100% true. But we, at our core, as men, don't understand what it is to be a victim. And so then you provide men with this victimhood mentality, and it becomes their identity. And they lose, I think, the path to responsibility, and they lose kind of what it is that makes them resilient and what it makes them able to cope and deal and push and persevere and sacrifice and stress and risk and all of the things that it means to be, or all of the things that can happen to you in life that men typically can have roll off their back to some extent, get up and go battle the person that is trying to conquer their land the next day. And so I thought that was essentially what I said to this person I was talking to. And I thought it was a good subject for the podcast.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. It's funny. I heard a conversation where child in the family, young child, had kind of a medical emergency. It had to do with his breathing, and the mom was reaching out trying to get somebody to help watch the other kids so they could take them to the hospital, but then found out that the dad was freaking out so much over it, the child's condition, that he couldn't go. He stayed home with the kids that were there, and the mom took the kid to the hospital. Now everything's okay. It's a breathing thing, kind of like what Maddie had happened to him, when he was young with his asthma or something like that. Um, but but it really struck me. And maybe you don't know, marriage, young marriage, you don't know how, the man's going to react. But I felt bad for her. I mean, you need a rock there. You
Yeah.
need something there that's gonna be there when you have it, at a time like that to where, it just really hit me. It's like, well, he couldn't even handle that, and I've had stressful things that, scared the, bejeebers out of me, about stuff, but you still gotta show up.
Yeah.
You still gotta stand there. It doesn't mean it doesn't affect us, doesn't mean I'm not concerned about the situation or I have no idea how it's gonna work out, but you gotta still show up, you gotta keep moving forward with it, and so it just kinda struck me. I personally wouldn't even share that story, I wouldn't want Kirsty sharing a story about me about when I was just turtled up because I was overcome with the situation and she had to deal with the situation. Now, we're not talking about going to the dentist because I will turtle up about that and she'll make my appointments for me. But I'm talking about in real life situations, where you got to show up, where you need to be that. And I thought that was something, to hear that. But I don't think it's an isolated one off situation. There's a lot more of the Mr. Mom type of mentality and think that's a cool thing for dads to be able to do that. And I say, I'm not against a sugar mama, but there is something that's kind of indictment against men today. And I think that's where the culture's kind of taken it to where they're not in the role because it's identified men, what makes men men and what makes men really good for women and for society has been labeled toxic masculinity in a way to kind of reduce it, to knock it down. But I think it's a detriment to the society that that happens in for sure, and to the relationships, the marriages, the children that are raised under that kind of mentality. It's different, and if we don't kind of do something like we want to do here, where you got young men, let them know, hey, it's okay for you to be a man. It's okay for you to be what you are. It's almost like somebody that's identifying with their identity, whatever it is. The boy, girl, whatever I want to be. But when you have a dude that knows he's a man, knows he's a male, but still identifies with the characteristics that makes him the man that the world really needs to be, we're putting young men in kind of a dangerous place there. And it's not just for them. The society will not benefit from weak men. Matter of fact, weak men are very dangerous. A strong man that knows the situation, knows how to control the situation, knows what to do with the situation, is much safer than a weak man by any stretch.
It is strong men that protect the fairer sex and society at large from weak men.
Mhm.
That's the reality because the worst thing you can have is an emotional man. And I think that, there's this thing, well, men have feelings and all that, which absolutely they do. But the reality is that you can hurt without being a victim, right? You can be hurt and you can get your feelings hurt. You can feel the stress and all of those things, but you can do that without becoming a victim. And I think that's a distinction that a lot of people miss, right? Because men can be, betrayed as same as anybody else. And we all had, everybody's got childhood issues and father programs and mother deals and, you know, lose your job, like I said, or the courts are hammering you, or your employer's not working, it doesn't respect you, or your marriage is bad, all of those things. But as soon as you accept being a victim, then and that is your identity. For men in particular, I think that we give up the one thing that I learned very early on that is one of the most valuable things that we have. Because as a poor kid that came from the streets, when I say all the time, you can't, it's very difficult to escape if you grow up poor because everybody around you is used to being poor and everybody around you has the same reason for why they are poor. Like I said, my childhood screwed me. My father did, my mother, the economy, your counselor, the teacher, your neighborhood, your community, whatever it is, they all screwed us over. And so when you start to go out and you grew up the same way, all of a sudden they have to look at it and go, wait, 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 wait. If he's getting out, the whole basis of my life, The whole reason that I have not achieved or tried or done all of these things that I want to do are now thrown out the window because that dude grew up exactly the same way that I did and he got out. So there is this subconscious need in the poor community to pull everybody back and not let them escape, because when you escape, you are taking the most valuable thing you have, which is agency. You are claiming back the most valuable thing you have, which is agency. And men without agency is dangerous and sad and pathetic. And this thought that something else controls you. I don't care what your health is. I don't care what your situation is in life. I don't care how much money you're making. I don't care if you're married or divorced. I don't care if you're going through the hardest time or the easiest time. As soon as you accept being a victim, you give up that agency, and your agency, that is that you have control over your life, over your actions, over the things that you do, you give that away. And when you give that away, then you cease being a man, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually looked some stuff up on that, and I've got a question here for you based on this and what we're talking about. The statement is there's a massive push for comfort, passivity, and emotional overindulgence, talking about the feelings uh, over discipline. Okay, let me rephrase that now. There's a massive push for comfort, passivity, and emotional indulgence over discipline. When society tells you it's okay to take the easy way out, how do you maintain that standard of being a man without succumbing to that drift of our society?
Yeah, and I think that men generally deep down understand what it is to be a man. We maybe it's been so ingrained that it's hard to see, but we know it when we see it in other men, and we say to ourselves, that's what I want to be. That's what I would like to be, if you're being honest. Young guys have a harder time being honest than older guys. Older guys have a tough time being honest if they've never been honest, right? If they've
Hmm.
never been introspective, if they've never thought about themselves, then it gets worse at age. But for older guys, it's the thing I've always said about when I was incorrigible at 25 years old. Let's say everybody has the 100 gig hard drive, and I thought my hard drive was 80% full. The reality was it was probably 20% full. Now at 57, let's say with all of the experience I have, I've got a hard drive that's 80% full. But the older I get, the more I'm sure it's only 20%, and I'm going to run out of time to learn all of the things that there are to learn. And so, in that context, I think that uh, men need to be willing to hear the truth and accept everything is their fault, tell the truth about what happens, and then take responsibility for whatever it is that took place, even if it's not your fault. I'm going to say this again. You take responsibility for what comes next, even if it's not your fault. That is power. That is agency. That is what is the essence of being a man. Now, you can make changes to the people that might have done things to you. You could take yourself out of toxic environments that led up to this thing taking place. But the reality is, as soon as you blame someone else, again, you hand away your agency, you become that victim, and then in your head you're battling what society says is okay to be, this overly feminized society that we live in, and what that little voice in your head tells you that you can be. So I think the best thing to do there is to find a group, shameless plug, like the
Hmm.
Kronos Forge on School, SKOOL. Y'all go check out the Kronos Forge on School, because it is built and put together, almost specifically for this, exactly what we're talking about now, which is just give men a place to go. And I mean, that's like I said, a shameless plug, but at the same time, it's reality. And you go find other men who think the way that you think, or who you enjoy, or you respond to the way that you think, or you wish that you could think that way or feel that way or act that way, or you can, but it's just, you're surrounded by people who are knee deep in the victimology of society today, the culture that we live in, the victimized culture that we live in. It's cool, it's chic. We live in the greatest time to be alive in the history of the world in the United States. The most poor people in the United States live a life that is almost unimaginable to the rich 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
And yet we think that we have issues. So you need perspective as part of that. And you younger guys, the nice thing about groups like this is for the older guys, it gives you somebody to see ideas and maybe how you feel and maybe keep you on the straight and narrow. For the younger guys, it gives you the benefit of the older guys to give you advice and knowledge and experience, which is the most valuable thing in the world. And so it's groups like that, but there are lots of them. To go to the Kronos Forge and check us out there. And I think you'll find what you're looking for. But there are groups everywhere. The world has become isolated, and video games being the primary reason for that, and the usage of those by men in particular is just making this problem worse. And so then you go to yourself, well, I don't need that. That's not me. Meanwhile, you're playing video games. You're working and playing video games. You have no personal life at all. You're not going out and meeting anybody at all. Right? Maybe you feel that victim. I'm my boss. If he give me a better job, or I'm better than everybody else in there. Nobody appreciates me. And you come home with your head hung down, and there's no chance for me, and all of these attitudes. And the reality is that you live in the greatest time to be alive, but you don't feel it because everybody around you is a loser, just like you are. And in a group, men in particular, you will not raise that group to your level. That group will pull you down every single time.
Yep. It's funny. We need a soundboard because when you're going about all the pity and all that, I wanted to be able to push a button and go that wah wah wah.
Yeah,
we need
yeah,
we
yeah,
need to
yeah.
we need to upgrade. Talk to Matt about upgrading so we can do that. But and I think it's something I was thinking about as you were saying that we always talk about young men getting somebody that they can look up to and emulate as far as being really the kind of man that you want to be. But I think there's something as I've gotten older and I think this is in you tremendously, the fact that you're reaching out, especially towards younger men, because that's the generation coming up that'll be the next, leaders of this country, whether it's in political, business or just in society. Um, but I think there's something instilled in us to pass on knowledge. We talk about the young men, how do you gain it? How do you look to it? What you surround it? But I think there's something in us I've noticed in me, a desire, because I work with primarily younger people in their 30s, not even really 40s, 20s, and 30s. But I find myself when I'm listening to conversations or I'm some of the groups, being able to just to your point, seed, little bits of wisdom. You realize how much they're missing, how much they don't know. And I know you've done this. You listen to those conversations, whether you're in the sauna, I don't want to say you listen to boys talk in the steam room. That just gets a little weird. But but when you listen to them, it's like listen. I mean, to me, sometimes it's listen to not kindergarten, but like grade school kids talk about making plans and stuff, and they're so far off base. They got wild ambitions and dreams and goals, but they don't really know how to connect the dots. So they just really go out there. And when you listen to these young people do it and what they struggle with, to me, it's like, well, that's no big deal, but that's the wisdom I have. That's the experience, which is about the only way the wisdom really has gotten there, through experience. And so I think there's a big part of men too, not just young men wanting to learn how to be men, but I think older men who grew up in a different generation, but still have the impact of society on them, where we think we have to kind of keep our mouths shut. Can't speak up against it. Don't want to get her upset, type of men in marriages that, or relationships, even if they're our age, like, I can't get her upset. That's the same, almost a feminizing of your role. And I think what you miss out is the ability to pass on wisdom and knowledge. I think that's kind of instilled in us to do that, to be able to do that. Because when I hear it, it's almost instinctive to want to say something, not necessarily just to butt in, but it's like, look, I got something that can help you with a very situation you're struggling with. So I think that's something that's built into us, to be that. Got another question here for you. When you've built a career spanning decades and managed thousands of people, you see patterns. And what do you see as the biggest threat to a young man's professional ambition in today's kind of economic world that we live in right now?
Uh, I think the people that are around them. Look, we know people, and we've been talking about young people, but it's young people and old people. I mean, let's say people our age, right? People in their 40s. It might be a different set of reasons, but I think they're degrees difference. They're not 180 degrees difference. But we know men, Steve and I, who have spent 20 years being right about whatever happened to them and still destroy his life in the process and never move forward. And you never move forward because you were right. This thing happened to me, which you were probably right about, but you just never got over it. The old adage or the old saying, I always say for my childhood, I am who I am in spite of where I come from, and also because of where I come from. And both things are true. I never said to myself, if not for, I would have. And that is what so many people say today. If not for this event, if not for my mother getting divorced, if not for my father beating on me, if not for that teacher that did that thing, if not for the alcoholics or the drugs or the neighborhood or the school I got into or the one I didn't get into or whatever, if not the clothes that I couldn't afford and they made fun of me, if not for being bullied. The smallest, tiniest little excuses we say, if not for, I would have been. And Steve and I know people who have been saying that for 40 and 50 years. And they never get over it. So it comes back around to agency. But that mindset, if not for, I would have, will be prevalent in your social circles. And until you're willing to extricate yourself from those circles, it's going to be very, very hard for you to get yourself out, because on your own, when something unfair happens to you or you believe something unfair happened to you, that just turns into bitterness, and bitterness is a poison. And when you are surrounding yourself with other people who are bitter and are infected with the same poison, now it just makes it that much more of a toxic relationship that feels normal and natural and feels like the way things should be, because y'all are commiserating together and life seems good. And when you go, there's no joy at anything that you do because it's always a constant complaint. And then you have destroyed your whole life over that one thing, 10 things, 100 things, and you gave away your agency. So I think that, to answer your question, Steve, you want to be successful at anything in life: work, home, business, employee, marriage, children, whatever, at school, whatever it is, you have to have agency for yourself. And it starts with getting rid of the people around you. And a lot of times that's family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's something you kind of really touch on something there as far as having that around. And, and I think another thing that really affects young people today is their exposure to social media. So what they do is they see an end result of something they want to be, but they have no idea of the steps to get there. So I think a lot of times, young men like, I want to be a business owner, but they're still, driving for Amazon, right? And they don't know how to connect the dots. So I think there's a disconnection in there. They live that, and it frustrates them because they don't know what to do, because they see an end result of a business owner or something big, or I want to have this, whatever social media puts out there is the end goal. But I think what really hurts their ambition is when they see that end goal and where they're at, they don't have any kind of connection between the two. So I think a lot of them just end up going there. You don't feel good about you, don't like your situation, commiseration sets in, to your point earlier, what you were talking about.
Yeah. Kronos Group Forge.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the Kronos Group Forge and get some perspective. What you're talking about, Steve. Men, listen to me. If Steve just described you and you've thought about wanting to be an entrepreneur, or you thought about wanting to go for a promotion that you don't know if you can get to, or you think you're better than you are at what you're doing, but you don't know how to do it, and you don't have the skills or the education or the know-how or the wherewithal or the money that this guy has or that guy had, as someone who has done coming up on $500 million in revenue, and I lived on the streets at 17 years old, I have zero education. Let me remind everyone, No one knows what they're doing. Nobody. Nobody has the secrets to this. I had no idea. I grew a company to $14 million a year because I knew how to sell. How? I just had conversations, and I was off the streets, and I had some common sense, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I had to cut it back to 8 million because I forgot one very important thing about selling, which is you got to sell profitable. Okay. So I had to learn. I knew nothing about business. I bought a house when I was 20 years old because I read an article that said you need to buy a house. I didn't know what a mortgage was. I didn't know what equity was. And I didn't know what an interest rate was. And I sure as hell didn't know how to figure out what one was and how it worked. I just know I needed a place to live. And someone said, buy a mortgage. I didn't know what a mortgage was. So this idea that the people who have things magically just came upon them and had all the skills they needed to do this work is madness. And this is the message, to your point, Steve, that gets delivered day in and day out on social media. You're a victim. The people who have it all stole it from you. And they've got some sort of idea or some sort of insider knowledge, or there's some club or some group, and you're not a part of it. And you're on the outside looking in. I was 19 years old, got stabbed behind a bowling alley with a 10-inch screwdriver. Okay. I knew nothing, and neither does anyone else. But we have one thing that many people who think that way don't. We're not victims. That's it. We have agency. And so we're going to go out, and we're not scared of failing, and we're not scared of learning the truth, and we're not scared of looking at ourselves and trying to figure out what am I not doing correctly. We're not scared of going and asking. This is big for men. Man, it took me a long time to learn this one. Go and ask questions, and then shut up and listen to the answer. I cannot tell you the number of times I've been asked a question by a 25-year-old dude, a good introspective question that I thought, man, this guy, that's a good question from such a young guy to ask, only for me to get 10 words out, get interrupted.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I got another question here for you, kind of hitting the sweet spot of how we started this podcast before the video started, which the audience will be grateful for. But a lot of men have traded their physical capability for digital comfort. And why is intense physical training, whether it's heavy lifting, sprinting, walking, mobility work, an absolute non-negotiable for a man trying to dominate in business and life? How does that translate into what you're going to be? And that's a big part of what we do in the Kronos group as well.
Yeah. And that is, we have to separate working out and the caricature of the gym bro, or the caricature of the, Mr. Universe or Arnold Schwarzenegger or any of that. Unfortunately, that gets a whole lot of time on social media. That's, all of that gets dominated, and the people that we see are just jacked and ripped in a way that 99% of the population could not be. So we have to separate that one from the other. We're talking about what you're talking about, Steve, is just being healthy, being strong, being fit. The value, and I can speak to this very specifically in a way that probably no other person can, in that I went blind as a kid, but I was always gifted when it came to sports. I'm tall, I'm big, I was quick, I was coordinated. So regardless of the sport, historically, I have always been the best at it. And then at 38 years old, my heart got hit with a block in my left ventricle that grew out of nowhere. I was born with this in my DNA, and it changed my whole life. And so away went my whole sporting career. And then over the years, I got fat. I lost strength. I was struggling to get upstairs. I was having, 70 hospital visits over the course of 7, 8, 9 years. And then I decided, at my sickest, as I was dying of opioid addiction, I broke my back when I was 19 years old, that I wasn't going to die like this at 51 years old. And so at 52, off I go to get in shape. I'm running businesses. I'm starting businesses. I'm building businesses. That dozen businesses we talked about, that's $500 million in revenue. All of that was while I was going through all of those things that I just described, after coming out of a childhood that would rival most anybody's uh, in its brutalness. And so, what I'm getting at is, then I got healthy at 52. I lost 100 pounds in 8.5 months. Put on a bunch of muscle, also put on a bunch of weight, and now I'm back down again to what is my weight that I weighed in the 8th grade. I'm not quite that much. Maybe I weighed in high school at 225 pounds. I weighed about 200 pounds in 8th grade. I'm going to get down to about 215 pounds, but right now I'm 225. It's the healthiest I've ever been. But here's the thing: I started a new company. I just bought a company and am transitioning one over, and I'm in the middle of a development. So I'm working 3 companies as we speak. I go to the gym 6 days out, or 6 days, or excuse me, I lift 6 days out of 7. I go to the gym 7 days a week. I'm as active now than I have ever been in my whole life. I have more energy mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And all of those things are critical, because your life, men, is downstream of your health. Now, that isn't to say that you can't have a successful life and a successful marriage and a successful business and all of those things and be wildly out of shape and unhealthy. You absolutely can. But being married for a long time takes work. Building a successful business takes work. And the more tools you have in your toolbox on your side to help overcome the long odds that you're going to face in building a successful business or building a successful life, is going to then benefit you greatly. And so, being in shape and taking care of yourselves first, like they say on the airplanes when you get on, when the mask falls, put the mask over your mouth first so you can breathe, because you can't help your kid next to you if you can't breathe. And so, in that context, as I have literally gone through what I just described, and then I got my health back, I have more energy. I'm more aggressive, again, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Everything is operating at a level that that probably is unimaginable to me 10 years ago. And so, as I sit here looking forward into the future, I see the sky is the limit, and I'm 57, but I don't ever stop and think about that, because my health comes first and foremost. As a man, I can defend myself. Not only can I fall on the ground and get back up, but I'm 225 pounds. I'm, 130 pounds, 127 pounds of skeletal muscle mass. I am a big, strong human being who can move quickly, so I can defend myself, I can defend my family. At its most basic roots, that's what it means to be a man. On top of that, and then what comes with that, is all of the other benefits that having a body shaped and the food that I eat come into me that way, that I can then deploy to defend my family, God forbid, but more importantly, in the world that we live in today in Western civilization, to go out there and try to destroy and build and grow and get margin and find customers and make companies and successful kids and working in the community and changing people's lives and improving my life and improving the life of those around me. It goes on and on. So I think that health, full stop, period, is the most important thing that you can do to lend itself towards you being successful.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And to expound on it, I think one thing that the hard work does is when you're in the gym, it's just you. It's you pushing. Maybe you have somebody to work out. That's great. Somebody to push you even a little harder. But it teaches you how to do hard things. It teaches you the discipline of getting up and going every day. It teaches you the discipline of pushing through on that last rep. And I think that has a lot to do where it'll translate into business as well when you're taking care of yourself. When you don't, and I do health coaching primarily for weight loss. And the biggest thing when I get into personal questions about it is they just don't like the way they look. And I talk to hundreds of people that'll admit that. So I know it's out there even for business owners. You're not taking care of yourself physically. You think, oh, I'm doing good in the business. I'm trying to push this. And I challenge you, if you were to take care of yourself, because for the entrepreneur, solopreneur, you are a big part of the whole business. And if you're taking care of that, then it translates over into the business as well. The skills, the mindset, the ability to do that, do those hard things yourself makes it easier to do the hard things in business. And I say hard, I say it's easier to do, but they're still hard things. But you approach them differently because the idea would be if you were to get up in the morning and go do a workout, that might be the hardest thing physically you have to do that day. Everything else might be a mental decision you have to make, but because you've already do the hard thing first, I think of I think it's Brian Tracy's book, Eat That Frog. Mark Twain said, if you got to, eat a frog, it's best to do it early in the day. Just get it done first. And he said, if you got to eat two frogs, eat the bigger frog first. And the whole idea is you do the hard stuff. And I think when you're out there pushing yourself and developing the discipline to do those hard things, it automatically translate over into business. And any guy will stand there and say, no, I feel good about myself. I would challenge you that you're lying. You really don't. What you've done is you've learned how to push it in the back of your head and ignore it. Because everybody has a feel. Because if you were to say, if you're 60 pounds, how do you feel about yourself, Jerry, compared to the way you used to? And not that you were touchy feely and thought about the emotions, but do you feel more confident stepping into a sauna, stepping into an environment where you're with other business owners, the way you are now in your physicality compared to where you were 5 years ago? Does it make a difference to you, just firsthand knowledge?
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. So I think that, when they say they don't, it doesn't matter. I think what you've really done is you've learned how to push it back and just ignore it, but it's there. You're sitting there on the living room watching TV and you can put your plate on your belly because it's big enough to do that. You know, there's something to that. Now, when you're by yourself, you don't think about it. But I guarantee if somebody walked into the room that wasn't a family member, you'd immediately stand up. You wouldn't just keep that plate on there if it wasn't like one of your bros or something like that, but somebody else.
Dude, I
You
used
would
to go to the movies. And this is 4 years ago. I would go to the movies and I'd sit back in the chair at the movies and I could put my drink on my belly right here and the drink would just sit there and I'd watch the movie. I kid you not. So that
cup holder held your
sorry to
phone.
interrupt you, but yeah, that's
No, it's good.
literally
No,
you
you're making
reminded
a
me.
point.
I
I
just
wanted to
said
bring
it
it
there.
in. So I
Right.
challenge men, get into an environment like the Kronos group where you're going to push your standard, because it's not just business. It's who you are as a man. It's how you take care of yourself physically, because something that Jerry's realized and, Matt and I are 100% on board with is how you take care of yourself is how you show up every day, whether you're doing business, whether you're doing your relationships, whether you're out in the community, whatever you're doing. And the confidence that comes when you take care of yourself. It doesn't mean you weren't a good businessman and everything, but your ability to attack the problems that you're going to have. And we know that as a business owner, you're going to have them every day, but the ability to attack them. If you had to go out and kill the pterodactyl the way you were before compared to now, what do you have more confidence in getting that and bringing it back and providing for your family or providing for your business? Cause you can, have that leadership and that confidence to do it. It's insurmountable, as far as what you can do with that. So I think, it's hard to separate the two. People try to, but I think deep in the essence of who we are as a man, we want to show up as the best version of ourselves. What we've done is, for one thing, you're perfect the way you are. Well, that's a
Yeah.
lie. That's
Yeah.
a lie. You know,
Yeah.
it's we always can do improvement, and we know deep down inside that we want that improvement. I talked to too many random people, too many people that I don't have a deep conviction about this. Everybody has that. They're all thinking it in some way or another. Okay. And going to, as far as getting in that community, this can touch you like when you first got into a group compared to when you weren't, Jerry, as far as something like the Kronos group. Um, right now, especially in the day and age we live in, and I think it's for everybody, and we see it in the social skills of young people really showing up. Uh, Isolation is killing men right now. They aren't connected, but they're connected online, but they're completely alone in reality. And especially speaking to the business owner, the man, what is the tactical value of a tight knit, high standard brotherhood like the Kronos Forge or in the Kronos group? What value does that bring? Maybe relate it to what you did when you were doing it by yourself and then you got around a group of other men that were doing well in business. What value did that bring? How big of an impact did that have on your life?
Yeah, it was huge because you have perspective, so you see how other people do things, how other people go about their lives. I'll tell you one of the biggest lessons I learned in my group had nothing to do with business. It was that my children had never, and this has been 20 years ago, had never been in a fist fight. And I thought, this was a terrible thing. My kids had never been in a fist fight, and how the hell are they going to get along? Because I identified so much of who I was because of this violent background that I had as a kid. And the group that I was in, most of them were older than me in their 40s and 50s when I was in my 30s, and they would look at me and laugh. I was like, "What the hell is everybody laughing at?" And they're like, "Dude, we've never been in a fight." Now, we didn't come from where you come from, but we weren't born with a silver spoon. But at the same time, some of us got jobs, some of us went into college, some of us worked at our parents' place. But almost to a man, they hadn't been in a fight at that table. And it really woke me up to the reality that being around these guys had taught me lessons that I don't know that there was another way to learn that, because everybody that I knew growing up had been in fights, because that was the world that I lived in. And so hearing people talk in a different way that I knew to be true because I trusted them, then you can count on that. Really opened my eyes to not only that specific instance, but also whatever else might come at my way that would make me go, hang on a minute. I gotta look at this. I gotta think about this. I mean, I think that men are being invited into weakness all of the time. And so you get in a group with other men like the Kronos Forge, or if you're an entrepreneur doing 7 figures a year, shameless plug, go and look at one of our cohorts, the Kronos Group cohorts. Culture tells men that your ambition is dangerous and toxic, and being aggressive is terrible, and your desire to be a leader is, again, toxic, and your competitiveness is really not competitiveness, but it's your insecurity, and you're awfully masculine, you need to apologize for that, and you're surrounded by it. So and you hear it in social media, you hear it in movies, you hear it in television. You watch a 110-pound chick beating up 200-pound ninjas and SEALs and all of the rest of it. And your wives talk about it, and your sisters and your moms and all of the females in your life are telling you that why are you so passive, and why are you so angry? Why are you addicted? Why are you anxious? Why have you checked out? And it's like, because you told me that being all of these masculine things is a trap, or excuse me, that being all of these masculine things is bad. And then here you are bitching at me when I am, like I said, angry and anxious and addicted, because you trapped me into this cycle where don't behave the way that you were born to. Don't behave the way that you're supposed to, the way that God intended for you to behave. Don't behave like that. That's all toxic. But then the downside of not behaving like that are all of these bad habits. And then you bitch at me also about that. So they've been trapped, right? That's a trap. There's no reason to fall for the trap. So come to the Kronos Group, the Forge. Come in there where you get to be a man. And what does it mean to be a man? It means to be, as Sun Tzu said, a warrior in a garden, not a gardener in a war. So you want to be dangerous, and you want to understand that it is okay to be dangerous. There is nothing more powerful than a man who is in shape and fit and is providing, and who is dangerous but is disciplined. In your brain, that is a superpower. So a harmless man is not automatically a good man. We know that, because a harmless man, right, somebody who's not in control of their emotions, can be one of the most dangerous. A man who has no strength, let's say you're not aggressive, you got no capacity to fight, you're passive aggressive, so you're not going to get in any confrontations. You don't have a backbone. Again, no discipline. That's not virtuous. It's just harmless. So a good man is capable of strength, but he chooses control. He's capable of a massive amount of destruction and violence, but he doesn't. He can fight, but he doesn't look for fights. He can talk and speak the hard truths, but he doesn't use those words carelessly. He can provide protection, like I talked about earlier. He can build things. He can compete. That's not weakness. That's controlled strength. And that's what you want from men. And that's what we want men to understand is okay. And that is how I would define what the Kronos Group Forge is all about on school.
Yeah, absolutely. To summarize what you were saying at the end there, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah.
That's the quote of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's highly true. I think you got to be able to be a man that, to your, the thing that resonated, you just have a backbone. I think that's what's missing in a lot of men, have a backbone. They think
Yeah.
it's better to kind of go along with the world and the viewpoints we have of men and just be nice. And I hate the word nice. Um, it just doesn't convey who we are. And I think that's when a guy, a dude, a young man, an older man tries to be nice. It's just incongruent with the wiring and the DNA. And I think they don't know what to do with it. So I think they get a little lost with it. And I think that's what kind of diminishes the ability they have to be that person that provides that, the phrase I've heard is, stand in the gap, to be there for that, to be there for your business, to be there for your family, to be that for your society, to be that strong one. I've got one more question for you as we wind this down. And I've never thought about asking you this. So I'm glad it's actually a good question that came up. When your career is done and you look back at the businesses you built and the culture you fought against, what do you want the ultimate legacy of the Kronos Forge to be?
That we taught responsibility, right? That men had a place to come, and we covered a lot of this. I think, though, that men take responsibility, because if you take responsibility for everything that happens to you, that famous story I've told where I got mugged when I was 14 years old and they broke my nose and 2 ribs and rolled me for dead, 4 guys did, underneath of a bus stop, and I woke up, walked and did all of that and stopped on this square block that's still in Portland, Oregon, in Northeast Portland, and a voice said to me, "Everything is your fault." And I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And it said, "Everything is your responsibility." And I was, blood down my front and both eyes black and my nose was broken. And I'm delirious, but it said to me clearly, "Everything is your responsibility." Everything I have today, everything that I've done, good or bad, right or wrong, every fortune that I've made, every fortune that I've lost was my fault, was my responsibility. And when you take responsibility, everything else improves. If you take responsibility for your home life is going to improve. If you take responsibility for your personal life, that gets better. For your health, that gets better. For your career, that gets better. Entrepreneurship as the boss, employee, student, all of those, husband, friend, all of those things get better. So if I was to say, what do people take away from the Kronos Forge, is that you can take responsibility. It's masculinity to take responsibility. And when you take responsibility, that you stop pointing fingers at everybody else. And that's the reason why we didn't do all of the things that we wanted to do, because we're victims. And so I'm negative about feminism. I'm negative about the female impact on society, but I don't blame women and I don't blame feminism. Uh, I don't blame the economy or my parents or politicians or bosses or the system. Even if it's true, you can't do that. Again, I'm blind in one eye. I'm mostly blind in my other eye. I broke my back when I was 19 years old. I got this growth in my heart. I got every excuse. I come from this terrible background. I have every excuse in the world. But that's not going to fix my body. It's not going to make my marriage last. It's not going to get me promoted. It's not going to make my kids respect me. It's not going to pay my mortgage, that's for sure. It won't help me stay sober. All of the things that will do that for me is responsibility. Responsibility does all of those things. So, victimhood is a good way to explain the pain. Responsibility, though, is the way out. Responsibility will give you a way out. So a man who is hurt, it's okay. Men get hurt, but you just can't let hurt be your identity. So if we were to define anything coming out of the Kronos Group Forge page on school, is to empower men through understanding responsibility and stop watching these freaking videos of 40-year-old dudes crying in the car. I can't help myself, and the music plays, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, and he's got tears coming out of his eyes. It's like, man, if I was there, I'd grab him by his shirt, yank him out of the car, slap him a couple of times, tell him to man the F up and get his ass into the house. Oh, they don't respect me, and I'm only a wallet for them. I was like, welcome to what being a man is. You sound like a girl. Shut up. Go lead your family and do what you're supposed to do. And this idea that you're a victim because of decisions that you've made and situations that you put yourself into is just ridiculous. It is disempowering, and it is you giving away all of your agency. So I would say the Kronos Group School Forge page, go check it out, because this is the kind of conversations that we want to be having with young men and old men. And if we have made it sound like it is just young men, I know a lot of 50-year-olds that need to hear this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, to wrap it up today, I think that's great. I know I've never asked you a question to get you to think about that, but the impact that we want the Kronos Group to have on men. And I have to say, if you're done drifting, you're done letting culture dictate your capability, your responsibilities, stop fighting it alone. Go to the link below, join the Kronos Forge group. Get in there, get around a community of like-minded men, get the information you have to get everything you need to do, the support, the guidance, to be the man that you know deep inside that you want to be. If you're a business owner doing a million more, check out the link below for the Kronos cohorts. Get around other like-minded businessmen that want the same thing, that want the same growth, and quit making those $100,000 decisions by yourself. Get in there, look at the links below, join us today, and get around men who want to hold the line in the world we live in today. We'll see you next week.
Boom. Bye, everybody.